In an era of geopolitical shifts and economic realignments, global cooperation is more critical than ever now, and how nations can navigate increasing polarization to foster collaboration and progress, I think that is a big challenge right now.
It is, certainly. So that brings us to our next panel discussion, which is something where we're going to have several ministers joining us from different parts of the world. They're sharing their perspectives this evening on a very pressing topic. And this is what we're discussing this evening. To be able to understand the perspective from Myanmar, Dr. Kan Zaw is joining us, Minister of Investment and Foreign Economic Relations for the Republic of the Union of Myanmar. Also joining us on stage in a moment is Olta Manjani, Deputy Minister of Economy, Culture and Innovation for Albania, and Sunil Handuneti, the Minister of Industry and Entrepreneurship Development of Sri Lanka, is here with us as well. So this is going to be a very interesting discussion where we understand global cooperation in its entirety.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And moderating this discussion is going to be Shreya Dhoundial, Executive Editor, Mirror Now. Shreya, all yours.
So good to see you, Shreya.
Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you very much for your time. And thanks all of you ladies and gentlemen for being here as well. We are meeting in what are difficult and rather unpredictable times. The world is seeing more conflict than it has after World War II. We've had the hottest year in history in 2024. Our global growth rate is underwhelming at about 3.7%, and we now have a disruptor in the mix. So since Donald Trump is the elephant in the room and the flavor of the season and someone who's dominating headlines, can I just start by asking you what someone like him, what a bully like him means for global cooperation? If you'd want to start, Sunil.
Thank you very much. It's a big question.
Huh?
It's a big question.
It's a big
Question.
fracture.
Yeah, question. Because of you asked about the Donald Trump. What's his experience? What's his practicing in the world? Huh? You know, now we are living in a world like we are living in a dispute world, politically divided world. You know, all the countries are fighting each other against environment. All are making money with the corruption. That's why next generation is asking from us what you are doing for the next generation people. Even in India, live 1.4 billion people. In my country, in Sri Lanka, 22 million. In Myanmar, Dr. Khan know well. There are also similar issues. In Albania, Dr. Olta know well. All are in similar way. That's why world is asking very peaceful environmental business. Very peaceful dialogue to the people. Not for boosting their political agenda.
Okay.
That's why we are urged to as a nation in third world country, Trump, China, our neighboring relation leader, Prime Minister Modi, all head of the leaders of the world need peaceful attempt to overcome these difficulties.
Dr. Olta, Albania, I believe, does find itself in a slightly difficult position vis-a-vis Trump. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I promise we'll just keep the Trump question to the first question, and after that we'll go back to our topic. But I do believe that there is some pressure on Albania to get 1 lakh Palestinians into the country and keep them there. How do you deal with that? You know, when you talk about global cooperation, that's hardly cooperation. That is a bully telling you do this. Otherwise, here you go, tariffs for you too.
Well, thank you for the questions. First, I would like to state that Albania is one of the biggest political, economic allies of the United States. But it is probably the worst of times, but also the best of times to talk about global cooperation, starting from the wars, trade wars, geopolitical rivalries, economic fragmentation, going on with the climate change, challenges, technological developments, but also disruptions. The world is more connected than ever, but I would say also more divided than ever. And globalization in a polarized world, particularly in the context of figures like Donald Trump, has been really marked by raising nationalism, protectionist policies, and a lot of skepticism toward international institutions. And this coupled also with the withdrawal of the US from international agreements and mainly a focus on the domestic priorities has really challenged the framework of globalization. And I already mentioned that under the Trump administration there has been a lot of discussions in terms of the protectionist policies that he's following, nationalism, populism, some US-EU tensions, I would say, where Trump's strained relations with the European allies created a little bit of uncertainty for EU members, but also for EU candidate members. And here comes Albania into the equation because we are a candidate member country and most probably we are going to join the European Union in 2029. So this is important for us that we actually align with the policies of the European Union when it comes to our political stance and our political allies. So we remain committed to the European integration, of course. We remain committed to regional cooperation within the Western Balkans, which is where we are actually located in terms of the geography. Of course, we remain aligned with Western foreign policy. We have aligned ourselves with the US, as I mentioned, with NATO. We are a NATO member country, and we support sanctions on Russia as well. We participate in NATO missions, and we contribute to international security officers. So in response to your question, I would say that we are indeed both an ally of the European Union and the US, and of course we're going to continue to keep this stance and be aligned with both of their policies.
Sir, can I bring you into the conversation as well? You know, when you'd want a mic. You know, we live in a multipolar world, right? That is what we like to believe. With someone like a Trump coming in, do you think that is set to change? And does a unipolar world actually pose a danger to our way of life as we know it right now?
Thank you, ma'am. I have a privilege to talk about this global polarization and also the unipolar and multipolar issues. I don't think the unipolar will emerge again because it has been the unipolar in the 90s and up until the early of 2000 until 2010. But now it is the time of the multipolar world. So that's why I don't think this new political landscape change as the US. I don't think this could happen again because of the counterpolars or especially the multipolars are emerging. Not only the US and the China are two emerging, the two bipolar situation, but there are a lot of the multipolars, especially like India and the other BRICS countries also. They are emerging very strongly, so that I welcome the multipolar world. And as Myanmar is in the very strategic location between the South Asia and Southeast Asia. So Myanmar is taking as a bridge between the South Asia and Southeast Asia. And also Myanmar is a very neutral country and non-allied country. So we have, to some extent, we are working very much friendly with all countries and our international friendly countries, so that, I fully expect about the more multipolar than the unipolar again in this current situation.
Before I was coming into this session, I was just doing a little Google search, And I actually found there is something called the Global Cooperation Barometer that is published by the World Economic Forum. I wonder whether you were aware of it. I only became aware of it a couple of hours ago. And that report is telling us that global cooperation is higher than the pre-pandemic levels, but has flatlined over the last 3 years. In 2024 itself, if you see, there are 70 countries that have held elections. There are some countries that have gone right, there are some countries that have gone left, and some countries have been centrist. In a situation like this, it's not a topsy-turvy world, but it's a difficult world to live in. Can I ask you where the convergence in global cooperation will be? Because clearly, if you look at the muscle of global cooperation, Dr. Olta, if you want to come into this, it's pretty weak. The fact is that the world together collectively has not been able to stop the wars we are seeing. So global cooperation is nothing to write home about. The world is changing, it has changed, it is changing. The way countries cooperate will have to change as well. Where do you think is that middle ground, that convergence ground, that common shared interest? Both of you, I mean, whoever wants to start and then.
Well, history has really shown that cooperation is really not a luxury, but it's a necessity. And if we go back to history, after the devastation of the Second World War, there were multilateral institutions like the United Nations, like the European Union, like the World Trade Organization, that actually emerged exactly and they were built on the idea that collective action is the most effective path to peace, to prosperity, to cooperation, to economic growth of the countries. And there are certain areas that I would say are really indispensable when it comes to cooperation. One of them, for example, is a big and a common challenge that the whole world is facing right now, which is climate change. And of course, no single country can combat climate change on its own. We definitely need collaboration. And while we were talking previously, when we were trying to have a warm-up discussion for this panel, I already shared with you the fact that Albania, the country where I come from, is one of the countries that actually produces almost 100% of its energy through clean resources, through hydropower. So even though we are a country that we really do not contribute in the climate change because, you know, it's, and we're trying to diversify actually the energy production through other clean sources like solar or wind power. We still, once we join the European Union, we will have to be part of the countries who contribute towards the climate change. So the question is it fair, you know, being a country that doesn't produce any pollution, having also to bear the burden of other countries who actually are big polluters. But I guess to answer your question, this is the challenge. So if you want to be part of a larger union, if you want to have access to a single market like the single European market, you of course have the benefits of being part of these larger conglomerates and larger unions, but also you have to pay a certain price for it. And this is the price of, you know, becoming more globalized and becoming more a country that collaborates and cooperates with other countries. Another critical area, in my opinion, is also economic cooperation. And protectionism and trade wars that actually threaten the stability yet history tells us that, you know, it is exactly economic cooperation that fosters resilience. So sometimes you have to pay the price for something in order to benefit from something else. And that's why Albania is towards its path to EU integration, exactly because we want to be part of a bigger union, we want to promote our tourism, we want to be more open. We have embarked on several reforms in terms of becoming a digitalized government, exactly to facilitate the communication and the cooperation with other countries, because I think that in this context is more beneficial compared to the costs that we have to pay to be part of this larger union.
Sunil, cooperation for Sri Lanka also, you were telling me, means having access to markets, which Sri Lanka doesn't have right now. What comes in the way? Is it corruption? Is it, you know, is it a PR exercise gone on? What comes in the way?
It's well known that about the Sri Lankan political history and the climate in the past history. There was a struggle, people struggled. After that, as you mentioned very clearly, there was a peaceful elections also. Same time the struggle of the people, and the same time with the peaceful mandate of the peoples. We representing that mandate, 2/3 majority mandate, people has given to us to overcome all corruption, especially in the level of the political level. Now as a nation, we are committed to corruption-free country. That's the thing. That's why people give that mandate. I can say assurance to the all investors here, business community, leaders of the other countries. Now we are open up with the facilitation with the corruption-free environment. Post-pandemic experiences, as you well, Priya said, no nation can have survive with the individually. No industry can thrive isolation. All should have a collaboration. Each other countries need to collaboration at the exchange the exercise practices, innovations, everything with each other. But in our country, in 2 decades, there was a big issues, 3 pillars we have identified. One thing is no access, freedom for economy without corruption. Other thing is tax barriers. Liberalization of the tax barriers also we have started now. Other thing is delay of the approval system. In even India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, in Sri Lanka. In some entrepreneurs trying to start a business there, they will take at least 1.5 years for approval system. In our countries, experiencing within 22 agencies, they have to take the permissions.
So what you're promising here on the,
but now it's single
on the
window
stage is,
system.
it's a single window system, there's ease of doing business, and Sri Lanka essentially is open for business. I'm afraid,
Recently.
Sunil, I'm afraid our time is up.
Yeah.
Our time is up, so we'll have to wrap this here. But thank you all very much for this session. It's been lovely knowing you and having this chat. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, panelists. I mean, we're talking about globalization in its current context, Aisha. But this kind of discussion is about more global cooperation, and there are certain impediments that are still kind of stopping us from cooperating. And when we talk about climate change, there's so much that the world needs to cooperate on, and yet there are hurdles.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And what great insight that we got from all of our marvelous speakers today.